this session maybe in a week or in 2 weeks. And the style of this class will be discussion. So if you have any questions or you want to comment, even before I finish all my slides, feel free to jump in, feel free to raise your hand, feel free to say something. Because I know that some of you are coming from anthropology background, and I know that probably even those who are not coming from anthropology background have already read this piece, this Pakun's writing about Japanese culture. So feel free if you have any thoughts or any comments on that. All right. Okay. So yeah, about this book. So this book is actually an ethnographic monograph, or to quote on how Pak Kun said it on this book, it's an byproduct of an annotated bibliography of Japanese culture, which is one of the annotated bibliographies on Indonesian peoples and cultures, and also a project of the Dutch Indonesian Cooperation for the Study of Indonesia. So, if you read this piece or this chapter, it consists of a detailed information, detailed description regarding Japanese people, Japanese culture, how um, the historical trajectory of this culture, and even the region, the religion, or the beliefs, and how the Japanese culture is practiced nowadays. Before I jump into the book, I want to introduce you about the one who wrote this book or this piece. So his Koentjaraningrat, or the full name is Professor Dr. Haji Kajang Pangeran Haryo Koentjaraningrat. He's obviously a crucial actor who developed anthropology discipline in Indonesia. He often called as the founding father of anthropology in Indonesia. His academic background is coming from the Yale University. He finished the master's there, and also the doctoral degree. And actually, to to understand this piece better, we can see how Pak Kun wrote the his writings from the we can see the three development stages, to quote from the Ahimsa Putra. So we see the writings from Pak Kun's in 1960s are more descriptive rather than analytical. And then move on to the 80s, the texts are more analytical in understanding national integration and the issues. For example, he highlighted problems in integrating diverse ethnics, problems in relations among people with different beliefs, problems in relation between majority and minority, and also problems in integrating cultures in Irian Jaya and Timur Timur with Indonesian culture. And then move on to the 90s. His focus was on comparative and macro perspectives to understand and to highlight the national integration phenomenon. And to put it into context, Pak Kun actually worked during a period of, we can say, post-colonial period and also nation building period. So that's why his focus was more into how the work of anthropology can contribute to the nation building or the national identity, because he also realized how the colonial perspectives, in this case, impacted by the Dutch perspective, was heavily influenced anthropology discipline at that time. So Pakun tried to understand that and tried to make how anthropological discipline can actually contribute and being applied to this development, this integration, this Indonesia's integration. Um, Okay, so there are several topics from Javanese culture by Koentjaraningrat. Of course, due to the limited time, I won't discuss in detail each chapter of this book. I will include some themes or topics from this Javanese culture, from this Javanese culture book. The first one is the division of peasants in the village and intelligentsia in civil servant structures in urban environments. We often called it as the peasants and priai. And then the second one is the dichotomy of Javanese religion. The third one is social and linguistic stratification, regional diversity and cultural identity, and also the core values, rukun and tapasalira. Actually, it's not only this two core values, but there are many values, many Japanese philosophical values that are embedded in this book. But this only the examples of the values of what Pakun wrote in this Japanese culture book. And then the next one is the transformation and modernization of Japanese culture. So we can see the Java Island here. So as we can see, even until now, Java Island only represents 7% of Indonesian land area. And even only that less than 10%, but it is known as the most dense populated islands in the world, even not only in Indonesia but in the world. And also in this island, there are many fertile volcanic soil and also highly volcanic islands, and that impacts to how agriculture was being the main source of livelihood at that time. And even until now, there are, when we study agriculture, Javanese, for um, especially irrigated agriculture, Javanese island or Java Island is the most studied about that irrigated agriculture. And also, other than the mountains and also volcanic mountains, there are also rivers. There are the main rivers in this island, and actually that rivers deposit fertile volcanic material into the agriculture. And of course, the seasons from these islands is divided into two: the wet season and dry season. Um, Maybe if we see it now, it's not like strictly that these two seasons because of climate change and many environmental factors and environmental changes. But I want to give disclaimer here that what we are discussing here is about what Pak Kun state on his book. And of course, um, even though the island only represents 7% of the Indonesian's land area, but it contains 60 of Indonesia's population. And that's why it's called the most densely populated island in Indonesia and even in the world. And maybe we can see in next slides how this situation or phenomenon makes the government finally created the resettlement program, the transmigration program. And yeah, so The first one is we can see that Pak Kun highlight the division of peasants and intelligentsia. Why I use the intelligentsia instead of priari, because it's the actually the first word that Pak Kun used, even though he also used the word priai, but I highlighted as the first word that he tried to divide between peasants and intelligentsia. Um, the peasants here are seen as the people live in the village communities. Mainly, they are based on kinship networks and subsistence agriculture or irrigated rice fields, heavy on the village administrations, and also there are folk arts. And the second group, it's called the culture of the urban intelligentsia and civil servants, or mainly called as priai. There are mostly have the socialization patterns, occupations in government service, and also sophisticated court derived artistic expressions. And maybe to put more into context, that it's also interesting to see the division between rural and urban here, to see how Pakun divide this um, regional context and how it impacts or being impacted by the people, by the occupation, by the values. And even though there are Javanese, but Pakun highlighted these differences. And then the next one is the dichotomy of Javanese religion. Yeah. So actually, Pakun quoted Gertz or Clifford Gertz, who talk a lot about the Javanese religion, in his book. Um, Pakun divided the Javanese religion into two. The first one is Agami Jawi. It's like maybe some of you will criticize how syncretic is being used in this book, but actually, Agama Jawi here is a religion that integrate Hinduistic, and Islamic elements into single religion, a single belief that often focusing on mysticism and ritual communal meals, or it's called Slamatan, to maintain social and spiritual balance. And Agama Jawi is dominantly found in Central Javanese, Negarigung, and also Mancanegari. And then I will explain about this Negarigung and Mancanegari later on. And the second one is Agami Islam Santri. It's actually a more Puritan and doctrinal variant of Islam that strictly follow the five pillars of Islam, and less influenced by local animistic or Hinduistic traditions. And this Islam Santri is found stronger in Pasisir, or in the coastal areas in Surabaya and Banyumas. But I want to remind you that actually this regional division is not strict. So you can also found Agama Jawi in the East Java side, and also the Islam Santri in the Central Javanese or Negarigung or Mancanegari side. But it's not dominant, or it's not strong to found that in this area or in this region. So this is an example of the um, Agama Santri and Agama Jawi. How agama this one, Agama Jawi and Agami Islam Santri, how both are influenced differently, and we can see why the Agami Islam Santri is stronger in the Pasisir, in the Surabaya area, because it also affected by how the Islamic influence enters from the Pasisir area, from the coastal area. And meanwhile, in the central area of the Java Island, including the Negarigung, also it actually a central site of the what's so called the Javanese values, Javanese culture, the Hinduistic tradition. It's found stronger there, so that's why the Agami Jawi is mainly found in that area. And then we move on to the another theme. It's called the social and linguistic stratification. So, central argument is that Javanese culture is organized by status, rank, and seniority. So that's why if you see how Japanese call other people, older people, um, someone who is more superior or someone who is in more inferior than them or who are younger than them, there are some linguistic ethics specifically to elaborate the system of speech. It's called ngoko madya and kromo, which requires individuals to constantly adjust their language, their dialect, their way of speaking or talking based on the social standing of the person they are addressing. um, so this speech level is considered obligatory based on the social distance between the speaker and the who received that or the addressee, and then the socialization of the status. Um, this speech levels, how this linguistic ethic actually is reinforced or being introduced since childhood. And to see actually it's previously it's the level of the Japanese speech or the linguistic etiquette, but this one is actually the phases of literary Japanese. The first one we can see, we have the Old Japanese. It consists from the 8th until 10th century. And then the second one is the Old Japanese of Japanese. And then it becomes the Balinese literature. That's why this Old Japanese um, was started from the 14th until the 16th century, and it continued up to the 20th century in Italy. And then the third one, it's called the language of East Javanese Muslim literature. It's where the Islam starts into play in this Java island. Um, Mostly because there is a Mataram that plays the huge part in how this language is incorporated in the cultural system. It exists in the 16th until 17th century. And then the next one, after the Muslim literature, the next one is the literary language of coastal Javanese Muslim culture. It's from the 17th until the 18th, and also the literary language of Mataram from 18 until 19, and then the Javanese language of today, um, which exists or developed since 20th century until the current or the present time. And I think I want to highlight also about the language here. It's also important for us to understand that these languages are were developing at that time, and it's also influences by many by the Dutch colonial, also influenced by the by um, the sellers coming from the other areas from India mostly, and also we can also see how the dialects are also changing in this periods of time. And I think I also want to highlight about how the hierarchy here is also change. For example, before the World War II, it's seen as the strict hierarchy at that time. Meanwhile, post World War II, it's seen as the simplification of speech level. There are the simplified speech level, and maybe if we compare it now, there are more simplified speech level, and actually, the younger generation less likely to master complex system, even the time when Pak Kun wrote this, because of the simplification of speech level, and this differences, this language is actually varied by the geography, by the cultural regions also. And I think I also want to highlight that language also reflects deep social hierarchy. It reflects how there are changes, there are the continuation, and also the transformation of how people see the relation with each other, how people see the the other people as superior or not. Actually, I will explain this one on the um, later slide. Okay, so we move on to the regional diversity and the cultural identity. So Koentjaraningrat contends that Javanese culture is not a homogeneous unity, but is marked by significant regional diversity. He identifies several distinct subcultural areas which differ in their dialects, folk arts, and also levels of Islamic orthodoxy. Negarigung, as I mentioned earlier, is actually the central Javanese court heartland. This is a place where the contemporary religious movement called Kebatinan movements flourish. And then the second one is called Mancanegari, or it's called the Out region. It's actually forming the fringe of the 17th until 19th century Mataram culture. And Mancanegari also includes Madiun and Kediri. And then Pasisir, it's the northern coastal area where the Puritan Islam dominates religious and cultural life here. And also there is Banyumas, or the western subcultural area. And then the last one, it's called remote regions, which is considered remote by people in Central Java. For example, areas like Brantas Delta, Surabaya, or Sabrang Weton, or which can be translated in English as the area beyond the eastern border. This is the map of the Negarigung, and then Tanah Sabrang Weton, Mancanegari. This is Pasisir, which it's can be understood how why this area is very strong in the Puritan Muslim, because the influence from the merchants, from the sellers, from other places are coming firstly from here. And interestingly, also Surabaya is seen as the place where it's called the Islam gateway for those people who share or who spread the Islamic or value or Islamic traditions in Java Island. And then there is a core values, or we can see the Japanese human relations are governed by a collateral value orientation aimed at maintaining social balance. The first one is gotong royong, or mutual aid. Actually, this is seen as a fundamental value of Japanese people. For example, in times when there are the people who are dead, people are doing this called gotong royong by helping the family, helping preparing the food, helping the infrastructure of making the home as the proper place to give respect for the dead ones. Or, for example, in agricultural context, there is a requested help and also the house repairs. And then the second one, it's called rukun, or maybe we can translate it as harmony. It's actually the state of minimized conflict and overt social disturbance. And it's it's a value where people need to maintain social relations, minimize conflict, try to live harmoniously with one another in a community. And then the third one is Tposaliro, or the tolerance. It's actually the constant effort to place oneself in another person's situation, being sympathetic, empathetical, in order to maintain the social stability, in order to maintain the harmonious organization or harmonious community, harmonious society. And then Ling and Prihatin, actually, this is also a philosophical orientation where individuals are taught to be aware and concerned about the potential hardships in life. So that's why in Pak Kun's book, we often read that many people, even um, from children, they are taught to have the prihatin feeling, or to try to understand others' struggles, others' sufferings, and be compassionate with them. And then the next one is lineal orientation. It's actually related to the dialect, to the linguistic etiquette that I mentioned before. This is actually a value placed on the trust, reliance, and respect for seniors and superiors, and often translated as the virtue of being obedience, to obey those who are in power, to obey those who are higher than us, who are older than us. And this is about the Japanese symbolic system. So Japanese symbolic system is mostly expressed in language or communication, in art or literature, in religious beliefs, rituals, magics, numerology, or social organization. So Pakun wrote that there are 2, 3, 5, and 9 categories. If you um, see how I try to explain and describe the way Japanese people live or preserve their culture, we can see there are dichotomies. For example, peasants and priai, like the high and low, and then familiar and unfamiliar, close and remote, urban and rural, right, left, sacred and profane, and etc. But it also in this book, Pakun wrote that even though it also influences the belief system. For example, in Islam, for example, Islam is seen as God in Islam is seen as the those as a being who is who is like far. Meanwhile, um, the the God in the Hinduistic is seen as a being who is close to the people. However, this far and close or close or remote doesn't necessarily mean that um, the concept of being or God in the Hinduistic is less sacred than God in the Islamic perspective. Even both are seen as sacred. So this dichotomy doesn't always go in linear way. It can be like even in contradictive, but we see this everything is like kind of binary or dichotomy. And then in Japanese culture, we also see the need to maintain the harmonious life, the balanced life. And it also implies to like the three category. So three here is seen as the dual system of symbolic classification that can develop into a threefold system. The third category here is a center category that neutralizes the two antithetical elements that keeps them balanced. If you see the line here, there are one and two, and then the third one is in the center to keep everything balanced, to keep everything neutral. So that's the role of the third category. And then there is also the five. Five actually we can see in directions. In compass there are direction north, east, south, west. And the fifth one plays a role as the center. So again, the function is to keep everything on track, to keep the balance of the directions of the compass. And the nine category is actually the directions and subdirections. The north, east, south, west, southeast, and etc. And center as the main part of that. And we can see the obvious example of this nine category is also manifested in many um, Javanese practice and systems. For example, Wali Songo, there are nine missionaries, Islam missionaries there. And other than that two, three, five, and nine categories, there is also the essence and meaning of human life. So Japanese people often see the essence and meaning of human life through the wayang literature, through the arts or the everyday arts. And many of them actually learn from the wayang actors, how the stories are told through this wayang characters. And in the book, it's also written that peasants are seen more practical, pasrah, or accepting their fate as it is. Meanwhile, for the priai or of from the first light, I wrote it as the intelligentsia living in the urban environment system, or called priai. They are having more time to discuss about meaning of life in Sarasean, or maybe we all know here nowadays as Sarasehan. It's actually a place where priai discuss and meet with one another, share about their ideas, their perspectives, and that's the meaning of human life. And then for the essence and meaning of human labor, Actually, all human actions produce results. There is you know Javanese sentence. It's sinten ingkang damel ngangge, sinten ingkang nanam ngunduh, which means he who produces will consume, and he who plants harvests. And mostly this belief or this philosophical value is embedded in the peasants community because they believe that you need to produce something, you need to harvest in order to eat, in order to produce something. You need to plant to gain what you already planted. um, and also Pakun wrote that the more literate, the more they connect with a vague idea of merit and connect it with afterlife, which also influenced by the Islam value. And we can see here it's from the Priai communities or the Priai groups. And even in kebatinan philosophy, they also connect the idea with achievements in this life, which might be influenced by European values because the Dutch roles, the Dutch values, and how Dutch puts their perspectives and cultures also affect how Javanese culture is transformed, is continued and developed from time to time. So connecting with these achievements is also seen influence from that value. And finally, it also relates to priai status and power and how it's seen from the superiority and priai wealth. And we can also see the relationship between man and nature, where peasants do not feel subordinate to nature but lacking the capacity to analyze its forces. That's why they think that living harmoniously or selaras dengan alam is very important for them. And they also sometimes see the beautification of the world. They understand the nature as something that beyond their power, beyond their capacity to understand. So if there's a disaster, for example, they understand and accept that phenomenon as a disaster, not uh, seeing it as okay, that's natural force, that's a proof that nature is beyond our capacity to understand, beyond understanding, beyond our understanding, and beyond our humanity. Meanwhile, for the priai, because they are mostly live in the urban areas, so Pakun stated that the priai does not heavily put this subordination to nature as something very, very close to them. However, in Sarasean or the discussions among priai, they tend to elaborate mystical ideas about God with religio-magical concepts and also forces of nature. And the next one, the Javanese people understand the perception of time. Primbon, where to sum it up, actually the peasants are more present oriented, and the priai is more past oriented, because peasants see what they can do right now, what they can what they can, produce, what they can plant, what they can do with the agriculture settings that they have. Meanwhile, the PIE, because they have more time to discuss in Samasean, they have more time to think and reflect on the things that have already happened, or the things that happen in their community. They are seen as more past oriented. And about the Javanese symbolic system, we see that the relationship between man and man, or human and other human, it should be close, it should be harmonious. That's why there is a saying in among Javanese people, mangan orang mangan nek kumpul. So that statement um, reinforces the need to be close together as a society, as a Javanese people. And later on, this statement, mangan orang mangan nek kumpul, it was used to prevent for the older people, to prevent young people to leave villages, because we all know that there was a government resettlement program from the New Order, and they used this statement to prevent young people to leave villages. Even when they are leaving the villages, the need and the social force to make them keep contact with the origin place um, also happened at that time through some traditions and some rituals such as nyadran, and also caring, or being compassionate towards neighbors, having respect and trust to superiors, also are enforced even to those people living outside the Java island, because they see that not respecting elders, not respecting superiors will cause troubles or kualat. And however, during the revolution time, especially during the time that um, the activities of the political parties, the communist parties at that time, um, having the big influence in the peasants communities, and it give the ideas of the critical thinking and critical acts even towards those superiors, and it influences how people finally see, or um, you know um, give this idea of respect and trust. That's why the practice disappeared among youth due to the revolution. And we can also see how this respect is being criticized by the young people, by the people who are active um, in the political parties, or even not like directly active in the political parties, but those who are influenced, or following the activities, also learn to criticize, learn to remake, or to create different meaning, or shifting the meaning of trust and respect toward older people or the superior people. And of course, we move on to the transformation and modernization. So Pakun argues that Javanese are in a period of rapid socio-cultural transformation. Um, there was a shifting from the agrarian, semi-feudal society to an industrial civilization that seen have disrupted, or have dismissed traditional ancestral values. And finally, it affect to the need of self-reliance and individual responsibility. And of course, the impacts is the um, decrease of the gotong royong or mutual aid system. And I think it's also important to highlight the process of this transformation, this continuation, and this shifting of this Javanese value as a part of the bigger phenomenon that happens in Indonesia that also impacts the Javanese people. And we can also see that um, the effects also can be seen from the linguistic etiquette and how people migrate to another island or coming to the urban society. They become they become a civil servant, or they um, become merchants or the sellers there. And it somehow shifts the value because they meet with other people who might not always be Japanese people. The cultures are combined and shifted there. So it's for the the context to draw the the dynamics of the Japanese people at that time. And the Japanese today, according to Pakun, is actually many peasants are migrants living in the city. That's why, as mentioned in the previous slides, they are not always rely on faith, because if we see the values that are written in looking at the peasant society, they are most likely relying on faith, nrimo or pasrah, right? But because the migration, they are working in the city, they're relying on the discipline or self reliance. So that's why the idea of being active towards life, not only like waiting and relying on what will happen to them, is also happen here. Um, and it's also worth noting that there was upward social mobility because there is a group, it's called Tiang Alit. So Tiang Alit are the people who work non-white collar jobs. Meanwhile, those who are considered as priai are seen as those working the white collar jobs. That's why it's called the civil servants, right? The government workers, because it's the white collar jobs. But there are the upward social mobility where the rural tiang alit becomes priai. So what Makun tries to say here is not a fixed state or the fixed category for every groups. They can move upward or maybe seeing inferior than previous time. And also there is family planning campaigns by the new order that affect how many Japanese think about families' future welfare. Because in for Japanese people, before this family planning campaigns, having many children are seen as the higher social status, and it's also connects with how the safety of the future. Okay, having many kids will help the family in the future. They can help working for the agriculture to more prosperous and to more sustained life in the future. They can, that thought is shifted or is change it because of this family planning campaigns. And if we see from the from Pak Kun's statistic, even the transmigration program or the resettlement program, compared to this family planning campaigns is more successful compared to this transmigration program, where there are also many Javanese people are being transmigrated to other islands, to Sumatra, to Kalimantan, and other places. So yeah, this family planning is successful program. If we see from the book of the Javanese culture, and also starting from the 1950s, people start to be more critical towards village notables and people from the city. Um, it's related to the rise of the Indonesian Communist Party at that time, which really strong, um, especially in the rural areas, in the peasants area. And because Indonesian society is using top-down approach, superior positions still plays important role in decision making and cultural system. So, if we see the structural or the system, um, you know, the the structure or the system itself, still it favors the superior people. But if we see from the how people perceives or practice that value, it starts decreasing. People start being more critical. They start to not not always in favor to the status quo, or not always trust those who are in power. Okay, so yeah, these are the pictures of the transmigration. This is in Tanjung Priok, and this is the picture of transmigration from the Java Island. Okay, so yeah, it's already an hour that I talk. Thank you so much for listening, and feel free to ask questions, comments. Okay, I think some are already in the chat. Okay, can you explain the ongoing conflict Kraton Solo between royals? Is the succession contested, and are Javanese values and status a major part of this dispute? So for this question, actually, I don't have a comprehensive understanding about the ongoing conflict Keraton Solo between royals, but I think if we analyze from the Koentjaraningrat book, we see how in in even in the royals itself, they have some preserved traditions, they have preserved values. And because of the young people, the young generations, they they are they're not always follow the strict rules, the strict values that their grandparents or their parents did at that time. So it might influence how the conflict um, exists between royals there. And when we see the conflict there, we need to also see how the land, how the um, how they have access to the land or have access to the resource there. Maybe if anyone have more comprehensive answers, please feel free to jump in or raise your hand. Okay, Yovita has already answered this one. Okay, I heard it's the primogeniture rule and the passing act or letter of succession. And they got petty changing all the padlocks and stuff. I heard that the Ministry of Culture is trying to be the middleman. Thank you, Yovita, for the answer. And I'm Iza from Malaysia, half Japanese from my father's side. My buyut from Madiun and Kendal. On mixed identity and Javaneseness. In Javanese culture, Koentjaraningrat explores what makes someone true Javanese. Does his framework allow for a hybrid identity for descendants or of mixed heritage in the diaspora? Or did he view Javanese identity as something that inevitably dilutes when separated from the social structures of Java? Yeah, so actually, this is a very interesting question. And I remember that actually Kuncharaningrat wrote um, the Javanese outside Java. There is a specific section about this Javanese outside Java and the Javanese migration abroad. The Javanese migrated to Malaysia, Suriname, Caledonia, New Caledonia, South Africa, and also um, one more. It's Sri Lanka. So the reasons not only because only the it's because the Dutch program to do plantation labor, colonial resettlement, and also due to the forced labor or Romusha, and even um, they they have already become the permanent settlers in those countries. Even so, many try to maintain original dialect and customs and traditions. So I think it's also interesting to note that. And there is actually a journal. It's also interesting journal about how traditions are being preserved by the Javanese people living in Suriname, because in Suriname it's only not Javanese, right? There are also many migrants from the Africa and other parts of the world due to the colonial times. So we see this meetings from between different cultures and different people, different group of people, finally create new not new norms but new way of seeing cultures, the tensions, how they create the traditions to maintain such cultures, and how they like assimilate or connect their tradition or their value to another cultures in order to create solidarity or cohesion among different groups. I will I can share the journal in the chat box. Okay. Yeah, okay. I will share the journal later because there are another question. Um Okay, Yovita, this is also interesting if we put it through Mataram perspective. Javanese is that, but there is this sense that when you go to west side of Java, they don't claim they are Javanese. But when you go to East Java, they do claim they're Javanese. Yeah. Even in this book, it's also the claim is mostly in West Java, there are Sundanese, while in East Java and Central Java, they claim themselves as Javanese. So there are even in Java Island, the distinction between ethnic, the identities distinctions happens, and it can change when you enter a new area, or it can change when you meet other people who have the same identity or some same ethnic as you, and maybe it can change if you meet other people who have different identities than you. Okay. I would say in general diaspora in Malaysia not really familiar of what is Mataram, what is Kraton, Javanese gamelan also very rare, except for Kuda Kepang, Barongan, Silat Ponorogo. Wayang Purwa is almost extinct. We see Jawa as one, not east, west, central, coastal. And I live in Johor Bahru and occasionally go to the National University Singapore to learn Javanese gamelan and baksan. Yeah, I think to put it um in a in a perspective that identity is never a fixed term, it's never a fixed concept, it's a fluid one. So when uh people see Java is one, not divided like east, west, central, or coastal. Probably it will be different from the people living in coastal. Maybe they have different sense of what does it mean of being Javanese compared to those living in the central Java, and maybe compared to those people living in Cirebon or people living in Surabaya. So that kind of identity, how they perceive their identity, how they perceive others' identity, and how other perceive their identity. It's fluid, and it can be different from one another. Okay, so we have Krista, very interesting presentation. My great grandparents are from Monogiri and they are displaced to Suriname. I live in the Netherlands. The Javanese form Suriname in the Netherlands are struggling with preserving their identity, and the people still experience the psychological impact due to the forced separation. Okay, Krista, do you want to share more through the voice, or if you are comfortable with that?
Yes, that's okay. Um, yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Krista. I live in the Netherlands. I am 32 years old, and I'm born in the Netherlands. And I am a community organizer also in the Netherlands. And right now in the Netherlands, there is discussion going on. The Javanese from Suriname in the Netherlands are very fragmented. So, and I think that is because we struggle with creating a collective identity. So the older generation, most of the Javanese, they migrated to the Netherlands from Suriname during the independence of Suriname, so in 1975. And the older generation, they are more connected to Suriname and they are more connected with the Javanese identity in Suriname. But the younger generation who are born in the Netherlands, they are not really connected to the Netherlands or Suriname or Indonesia, really, because there's not much known about the history of the Javanese in Suriname. And there are also other diaspora from Indonesia, like the Indo-Europeans or the Malaccan groups, and we are often confused with the other groups. So we're not really recognized as an ethnicity. And I think um, when you want to define your identity, you also have to be recognized and acknowledged by the society. Otherwise, you are you can give the recognition to yourself and your family members, but when you're not acknowledged by the society, then you always have to explain. And not for all people, not for all Japanese people, education is accessible. So it's also a problem that we also don't have access to the history of how the Javanese went to Suriname. So that's also a problem with preserving our identity. Because for myself, in my example, I didn't know about my own identity. I didn't know about the history. I couldn't explain myself to other people, and that is a big problem. And also of course, because of the social values, the Netherlands has a very assertive culture. You have to be bigger, and then you'll be respected, and that conflicts with like Javanese values. And the values, the Javanese values, it can be very hard to preserve when it can become self-destructive to um, be quiet when you live in a dominant culture where you'll be successful when you stand out. And that is the question for us: is can we be really Javanese in the Netherlands while we are dealing with the trauma of forced separation? So yes, thank you for sharing this.
Thank you so much, Krista, for sharing that. Yeah, I actually learned from the experience that you shared about like the the not not only the meaning but how Japanese is seeing themselves in Netherlands, and how actually they see the Japanese values itself, especially when you say that there are some values that are destructive, but that's a very reflective sharing. So thank you so much, Krista. And I will read other question. It's from Imran from Malaysia. So this is a question for audiences actually. Um, do you want to open your mic if you want to ask directly through the audiences?
Yeah, sure. I just wanna ask, as a Javanese youth in Malaysia, I also struggle because nowadays Javanese in Malaysia are not exposed to the culture, such as wayang, gamelan, and some Javanese dance. So I also struggle to study about wayang, gamelan in Johor, especially. So my question is, uh, how to extend a Javanese culture without exposed to the global Islamic resources and Western education? And how can cultural heritage be preserved without reducing it to a symbolism? What does an authentic continuity of Javanese identity look like in the 21st century?
Thank you. Anyone wants to answer? Yeah, so actually, because it's called the for Japanese today, Japanese youth today. Well, actually, my parents are Japanese. They are both from the Nagariung place, the Central Java. I think to reflect, when I read this Japanese culture by Koentjaraningrat, actually, I kind of reflecting it to myself because I'm so in my upbringing, I don't really raised in Japanese language etiquette or Japanese cultures, that deep Japanese cultures. But when I read that piece, I see that some values, some philosophical thoughts are actually embedded in my upbringing, in my environment. And actually, to answer the question, how can cultural heritage be preserved without reducing it to mere symbolism? I think the answer can be varied. um, I think, to give one example, it can be preserved through the how the family is developing nowadays. How even it's from the nuclear family, and then to move on to the bigger context, maybe we can see in the, in how the the things or the materials are being preserved, are being protected, who are protecting it, who have access to protect it, and how how can they be protected? Because I'm sure there are different ways of protecting things. And um it 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 is related to the regulations and law. Of course, it relates to the state, the the government. So I think it's also worth noting to when we see how things are being preserved or are being protected, in the general sense or in a bigger sense, we we can connect it to how the relations with the state, relations with the global values, or the global systems. And maybe to put it into more personal context, we can say from the family, from our communities. Because I know that many of my friends who are Japanese are trying to preserve their traditions, their family, Japanese cultures. Even some are required to speak Japanese at home. It's maybe it's a part of preserving the the heritage itself. It's my answer. Feel free if anyone wants to answer. Yeah.
Okay, hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, this one is especially I relate to Imran and Kak Widya. I'm sorry, I'm Kak Krista, because I am also Japanese, but I'm not uh, born in any sense in a cultural Japanese household. Both of my parents are transmigrant. Both of them born in Sumatra, and we migrated back to Java, and currently I'm learning in Banyumas. So I think this is a very unique transmigrant experience, yeah, because when you go outside from the center of your culture, it sometimes you can feel detached and you can feel lost. You feel confused because what's my actual cultural identity? Which one should I pick? On where I is it where I was growing up, or is it because of my descendants? So it's pretty hard and a tough time to discover and try to learn our own culture. So if I can share my experience, I think I can recommend you a book on Japanese culture. This is just a preliminary book. This is not a definitive book on learning Japanese culture. It's a book by Franz Magnisuseno on Japanese ethics, because it showed me a lot. How do Japanese people think? How do Japanese people think about power? How about marriage, about culture, about the difference between being a peasant or being a noble. And for that hybrid identity, I think we have to acknowledge that we cannot fully replicate what the Nagarigung Japanese or Yogyakarta or Solo Japanese. We cannot fully absorb them because that's not 100% of our identity, but perhaps or perchance in discovering where our descendants is, it will help us to be more proud into our Japanese heritage. And I believe with rediscovering again, you can reach out to perhaps in our group, yeah, in our WhatsApp group, if you want to look for resources on Japanese culture and Japanese activities, perhaps in your localities. We can share a lot of that things in our group. I think that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer and also your shared experience. Um, do you want to share something? It's user. I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't catch the name. I only read the display name. Do you want to share something? Okay. I will read another one. So I'm Fijar from Poris. Koentjaraningrat's framework is used to analyze Japanese studies. How have other studies discussed, challenged, and been influenced by his work? So again, my knowledge about this is very limited. Is regarding how this study is influencing other study, but from what I know, this study because it's a study comprehensive book ethnographic monograph in until the 1980s something, so there are changes, and that's why even in the end of the book, Pakun asked a question, a hypothetical questions to be answered by other research or other writings regarding Japanese culture. So yeah, basically he asked, are the the way of to preserve the culture itself might be influenced by um, by the value that they have, or the um, the the group that they are in, that kind of questions. I don't really know if there are research that already um, create a deep research about that, but it might be. So yeah, if anyone wants to share, feel free. All right. I will read another question. Uh, so it's from Adyuta. What are common pattern of marriages, exogamous or endogamous inheritance, um, among Japanese? Did Koentjaraningrat also discussed this in his work? I asked based on this access according to Emmanuel thought classification of family system. This determined political and economic institution orientation of society. Yes, Pakun in fact has specific chapter that discusses the pattern of marriages among the peasants and also the priai. um he discussed, I can even share the book. Okay, so I have homework after this to share the Kuncharani book in the lounge in our WhatsApp group chat. But yes, Kuncharani discusses about how marriages are being done, even um, the how the not only marriage, but how the children is being perceived, or are seen, and are being taught in the family. He also discussed it in the book because it's a very comprehensive, and um, it's a very it's a 500 pages book. So yeah, he discussed about that. Okay, I will move on to the question. Yeah. I think one of the things that makes Japanese culture relatively being stand out today compared to other Indonesian cultures, aside from demographic reasons, is that this culture is often disputed, both opposed and supported, even by its own adherents. And because of that, discussions about it are always subject to be contested over time. Yes, I agree with this, and um, I can add more and how actually this Javanese idea is being seen even from the Dutch colonial time. This area is seen as the center, as the especially in Central Java and the Pasisir area. These areas are seen as the center of economic, center of how the peradaban works, and how the idea of development work starts here, and the idea continues even after the uh, Pasca colonial times, after the independence time, and then continues to the New Order era through the transmigration area. Why Japanese people are being sent everywhere, not only to reduce the um, population in the Java Island, even in fact, in some ethnographic writings that I've read before in other areas. For example, Sumatra. It's in the South Sumatra, but I forget the writings. So basically, they said that migrants from the Javanese has the value of working harder, working to their maximal potentials to develop agriculture, to develop, to increase livelihood, to have a better livelihood and welfare for their family. So the value is embedded even um, to in the area that are not only Javanese people there. Even the one who spoke this is people not from Javanese, but also the migrants that are coming to Sumatra. So it's very interesting to see how the this Javanese value is seen as noble, is seen as great, as good, and even like comparing it to other places and see it as superior. It's very interesting, and even to see it in the like the governmental perspectives, it's also happens that way. Like Japanese people is seen as you know like living harmoniously, like I forget the term, but it's like um preserving the community to be good, to be obedient, that kind of idea, that kind of notion that is still being preserved until now. And it's Gabriela Laras. Upon reflecting the idea of deconstructing Javanese-ness, how then the principle or values of being Javanese have also influenced our governance in Indonesia to be so Java-centric? How do we how do we reflect and challenge the superiority of this ethnicity in Indonesia? Yes, I will read the Michael's answer. I agree that Japanese culture sips too much in our bureaucracy. In my experience, both being and interacting with local government, public service demands unnecessary amount of respect. When something needs to be approved, we have to unggah-ungguh to our superior. Although this pattern is consistently being challenged by Gen Z, who have a more meritocratic approach. Um, yeah, please everyone, if you have other answer, feel free to jump in. So my answer is not um the only answer. So everyone can answer here. Yeah, so I think to reflect and challenge the superiority of this ethnicity in Indonesia, we can also see how the power plays in the system that embedded in the Java superiority in many places. How Javanese is seen as, as I said before, as a more noble. The culture is seen as higher than the others, even sometimes like degrading other cultures. It's something that can be challenged and cannot be generalized. Even when we see the kind of stereotyping things, we can also highlight that and see that not only Japanese can do this and or can do that. Even other people having different ethnicities or different cultures can also do the same. Can also achieve the same. Can also creating something or having noble actions that Japanese do, especially in this like what's so-called quote unquote modern systems or practice. Even though I'm not really agree in using like the word like modern, but yeah, that's that's I think to reflect and challenge the superiority of this ethnicity, and maybe to reflect on ourselves. We sometimes maybe there are like cultural embedded things that we adopt from our family, we adopt from our um even not only the nuclear family but like our big family. It's also important to reflect on that. On a national level, I do think we have to keep reinforcing regional autonomy and start putting more control to local governments so we can prevent PSN or national project being directed from Jakarta without local participation. Yes, I agree. And to do this or to enforce this local participation, it's also important to discuss with them since the beginning of the program. Yeah, I think it's right now there are still more programs or more regulations that are more Jakarta centric rather than the place where the region where those regulations are being practiced. So involving them even from the brainstorming process, not only decision making process, but brainstorming, decision making, and also the post deciding the regulation. The pasca pasca creating the 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 law or the regulation. Also, everyone feel free to answer. Do you have any comments or thoughts? Yeah, I see sometimes Japanese using. Okay. Okay. I see sometimes Japanese using the title Raden in their names, but also I know Japanese who decided to not use the title in any official or non-official ways, just because they don't believe in this old status making. Yes, there are many people nowadays who choose not to use that title because they want to challenge or want to criticize the that hierarchy idea or the hierarchy practice among their society or the place that they live in. Okay, maybe. Okay, there are many interesting answer actually. Yeah, Julia Suryakusuma also adapting the pleization concept to define the concept of the state of Ibuism. And it is highly adopted in the military ranks. Yes. Yovita, do you want to share more about that?
Yes. I don't think I'm in the place to share more, but probably if like later on, like we will, if there's like a chance to discuss it about that, it will be an interesting topic to discuss it over and over again because it's a long topic, I believe, and also like involving like the genocide and anything, and the like how the I mean the conflict between Korani and stuff, and also the conflict between, and also involving like Saskia Wirenga's writing also. So it's kind of like a bit complex. So
All right, thank you, Yovita, and it's a very very good feedback for our project, for this collective project deconstructing Indonesia. Hopefully, we will discuss about the um, idea of the Ibuism. And actually, I remember even in this book, they state that the favoritism, or seeing those wearing the uniform as seeing as superior, as more noble, is also stated in Pak Kun's book. And it started with the with military group because they are wearing the uniform, right? And then that's why also it influences how people see the civil servants because they're also wearing the uniform. And I think it can also incorporate in how the priaization of seeing the sameness, uniformity, and finally the concept of Ibuism, the idealization of women, should do such things, should do a list of things that define them as the ibu, or as the women who are can be considered as the, as a good woman in that area. So thank you, Yovita. All right. I think I will. Okay. The last one is Gabriela. Thanks for all responses. Very much appreciated. I think our reflection, being Javanese, mixed diasporic born, is a long-term project to be done, to be engaged in this course of deconstructing and unpacking Javanese. Yes, I agree actually with this. It's again, it's a long-term project. It's a long-term reflection to learn and unlearn, and also relearn about the what does it mean to be Japanese. Do we really embed our Japaneseness? What needs to be challenged, and what needs to be preserved? What needs to be challenged? Because the ideas of that can be different from one group to another. Okay, and it's the from Ratu Nabila. I find the position of Javaneseness, particularly in relation to women, particularly interesting within our society. Branching off the mention of Julia Surya Kusuma and state Ibuism, but I've heard that the New Order government softened Kartini Day to be about domestic work and more akin to Mother Day. I find there's a level of Javaneseness as a default expected in women. For example, kebaya being the default graduation outfit for women in Indonesia. Yes. It's actually a very interesting part. Latu Nabila, do you want to share more about this? How Kartini Day is being decreased, the value decreased, or the shifted decrease. Maybe to see it like decrease can be different from one another, but like, the shifting. Feel free, Ratu.
is my audio audible? Okay.
I forgot where I heard this from, so please take it with a grain of salt. But I find that Kartini's work, Kartini's ideas are far more far more inclusive, far more not just about womanhood, but also she was a very class conscious woman, and I feel like Kartini Day when it was first brought about, I feel like it had a certain sense of like not only uniting like women, but also like a sort of kind of like class consciousness that uh, people can also like read and write and have the right to education. And I feel like I've heard that during the New Order, they softened it a lot more to be about like lomba-lomba, to be about cooking contests, to be about being a woman and being feminine and wearing kabaya and being with your girlfriends. And I think something about that legacy has left a long-lasting impact on the like on the image of the kabaya as well. There was like a quite long-standing discourse on social media quite a while ago because someone born male was wearing a kabaya and people were outraged because they viewed kabaya as a sacral sort of clothing, which is the kabaya is an important part of Javanese culture, but it is certainly not sacred. It is a part of the culture. But it is like an everyday piece of clothing, and I feel like there's a certain like almost like Javanese culture, especially Javanese women, being put like on a pedestal as a result of the new order. I find, and I feel like it kind of relates to Julia Siriakusuma's ideas of state ableism, but I feel like her work mostly focuses more on PWK and the government's interference with the programs. But I think it's very interesting still, yes.
Yes, thank you, Ratu Nabila, for sharing that. And actually, to see how the idea of Ibuism is being shifted, is being changed, and it's shown especially in the Kartini days. It's very relevant to see because nowadays many people are also challenge the idea of how we create meanings during Kartini days. However, even though we are challenging the ideas institutionally, the events of like, for example, wearing kabaya, creating the cooking demos class every Kartini days is still being like practiced institutionally, even though it's not about like right or wrong, but it's like the more the you know dilematics or even the like different sides of seeing this Kartini days, in it's being challenged, while on another people also enjoy to do the celebrations regarding that. Yeah, it's actually interesting to see how the Kartini day is being perceived. Oh, traditional outfits are not allowed now apparently by UE for graduation. Oh, really? I actually just found out about this. As a Universitas Indonesia student, I can weigh in on that. Our graduation ceremony is infamous for being cheap and forgive my language, a bit of flop despite the high price you have to pay to attend the graduation ceremony. Wow, okay. This is actually an information for me because I just found out about the what's being allowed or not being allowed for the outfit for the graduation. All right. And I'm sorry if I read this not in sequence because I just like read the things that are showing in front of me. So Adyuta respond to Gabriela. It's about the symbolistic render is using as a coping mechanism or surrogate of legitimacy when upper strata apparatus in every institution unable to expand and reproduce material benefit to their members. Adita, do you want to share directly to others about what you think about this? Okay. All right. Thank you, Adita. All right. So another question, everyone, thoughts or maybe comments, anything do you want to share? Okay, so yeah, Yovita, feel free.
Hi. My name is Yovita. So I don't know, probably like the way like I'm from Yogyakarta, so the way like it is being told here that if you go to actually Keraton Yogyakarta, you will enter like this room and the tour guide will probably tell you over and over again about Sri Sultan Hamengkubuwono the Ninth, and also my mother also kept telling us about this charismatic character like Hamengkubuwono the ninth. So I kept thinking like why the Dayak, I mean what happened when Indonesia gains its independence, and why like the Javanese culture is pretty dominant despite like if we see, I mean like the Javanese culture that is being highly that is being highly promoted by the ministry is like the Javanese culture that is like the kingdom's culture, like Mataram culture, or I mean like or Majapahit culture, or like the kings, and also Keraton culture, yeah, like that. So when it comes to culture, I kept saying like this is pretty stereotypical and sometimes like a bit a bit kind of like the surface for like the people who actually non from non Keraton and non Priai who make Indonesia independence, the Javanese people who make Indonesia independence. I kept thinking like what is the deal in the like independence itself, why like the Javanese culture is being highly adopted in ranks and in also the way they talk, and why like Jogja is given like extra extra degree to an istimewa. They say like it involved like in Hamengkubuwono the Ninth, but in the end like even like Hamengkubuwono the Ninth itself like she has been seen like not really it's pretty like honored here, but like some like between the progressive itself, it's being seen like kind of a bit opportunistic in the way like he declared the Reformation and stuff. But I kept thinking like what makes the Javanese culture is pretty like highly adopted in the ranks and in the government and in the bureaucracy itself, like what happened, and also the question about the language. I mean, most Indonesian language like is adopted from Melayu and not Javanese. And when they talk like, why not Javanese in the first place? Well, some people say like the Javanese itself is pretty. Do I say like feudalistic and pretty not friendly enough to be in the sense of that. That means like there's like a conflict in the making of Indonesia itself. Like why not Indonesian language? Why not like most like the national language is not from adapted mostly from Javanese or anything like that. I think it's pretty interesting to also know that like the, behind what making Javanese culture, what Javanese culture, the way they see Javanese culture today in like the ministry, in like the ministry campaign. But what we need to see also is like the Javanese culture without the influence of Mataram and without the influence of the kingdoms. I mean, like the without the influence of those kings, probably like it's a different culture. Like it's a different culture, and probably like we see like the conflict and stuff, and we will also see like when I see like Koentjaraningrat, like harmony. Well, of course, like there will be like many myth of harmony because in itself, like the harmony within like not Keraton area is pretty questionable. So probably that's also what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Yovita, for your shared thoughts and also a question that we can reflect on each of ourselves. And maybe to add more on the culture of Yogyakarta. So Yogyakarta actually and also Surakarta are considered as the part of Negarigung, based on this book, these Javanese cultures. And actually, this place, the Yogyakarta, it's seen as the place where the old literary history and the it's called the sophisticated art and music, and it has the highly syncretistic religious lives, which combines the Hinduism, Buddhism, and also Islam happens in Yogyakarta, and not to mention also about this central Javanese culture of Yogyakarta and also Surakarta is seen as the it's the basis of those linguistic etiquette, basis of the stratification of the Javanese language itself. So I think it's also worth mentioning how those plays that seen as central finally are embedded in everything, in the language, in the way of thinking, cultures, way of respecting people. um so yeah, that's why the Yogyakarta is seen as special even in the eyes of the Javanese people, as mentioned in the Koentjaraningrat book. I think it can give us the idea and also perspectives related to that. And yeah, I think how Dutch plays role and plays the Yogyakarta itself as the town, the for example Kota Gede, to create the social organization, the class structure, and the lifestyle itself. It influences how Yogyakarta is being perceived by the people of Yogyakarta itself and other outside Yogyakarta, and even outside the Java Island themselves. And yeah, because I think the beginning we can trace from the Dutch administrative colonial, how they treat, and which continues until even until now, as you mentioned earlier. So it's from Panji. If we want to observe the face of Japanese cultural artifacts today that are distant from their cultural center, we can look Japanese pop culture such as contemporary campursari songs, whose center of their production has shifted to East Java lately. Wow, thank you so much for this information, Panji. And from Chata, I might be wrong and controversial, but living in um is it China? China before Indonesia for me. Confucianism in politics feel much like Japanese values in Indonesian politics. This etiquette, respect for elders, unquestionable respect for leaders, rooted even in ancient Japanese kingdoms. Yeah. All right, everyone. So, anyone want to share maybe final questions or final thoughts? Okay, it's from Maria Putri. Apologies, but I missed the majority of the presentation and perhaps it has been mentioned, but could you maybe elaborate on rasa in maintaining this harmony in Japanese society? I think Ayu Utami has written quite a lot about it. So, Maria Putri, do you want to share what Ayu Utami has written about rasa itself? Or maybe to begin from the Koentjaraningrat perspective, actually, this rasa is being nurtured since children through the family and then the community itself and then the Japanese culture as a whole to have this there was a slide where it's called the prihatin, to have not only being compassionate towards one another but also to to be empathetic towards another. So that's why to care towards neighborhood, towards family who are suffering is also imposed in the Japanese culture. That's why those young people who migrate to other villages or other islands, particularly because of the government resettlement program, they are still expected by their family in their origin place to uh, caring keep caring towards their family and coming back to do some traditions, for example nyadran, um, or like other meetings with family. So it's how um, this rasa and how this this practice are being practiced and are being continued over time. And maybe to add more on rasa, I remember that my friend is currently learning about the Javanese dancing. And in Javanese dancing, there are some maybe some of you here are dancers, but who might know more about that than me. But yeah, my friends shared that the teacher told her to to olah rasa, to um melatih rasa or practice the rasa itself, the feel itself. That's why the the styles of the dances, gerakannya harus slowly. It can be rushed. It should be patient. It should be like step by step. Everything is need to be mindful towards every movement that the dancers do. So yeah, it's embedded also in the arts, in the dances, and even in the songs. Okay. Anyone wants to share the final thoughts? Okay, but basically she says that it's become a cultural operating system, and if I remember correctly, translated as mimesis in Theodore Adorno's terms. Okay, thank you so much. It's if you have the book or the readings, feel free to share it to the chat or maybe to our group chat on WhatsApp. Thank you, Maria Putri, for this. And it's Doni Christian. I think Javanese culture became central because it sat at the center of political gravity of Indonesia. The Dutch made Java the administrative center, and over time, Java became the reference point. The young republic then adopted this and make it a national template. Yes, that's correct. We can trace to the how Dutch treats this Javanese culture and like the specific region of from this Japanese island. All right, everyone. So it's already 9:30. And maybe some of you who are living in the central Indonesia time or even the East Indonesia time, it's already 11 or 10:30 or 11:30. So I think we need to end it here. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation, your comments, your questions, your thoughts, and everything. It's really valuable discussions for me, and I hope for everyone, each one of you too. And this session will be uploaded on YouTube in a week or so. We will inform it if we already uploaded in YouTube. So yeah, feel free to check it out and other previous classes as well on our YouTube. Thank you so much, everyone. And I will share the book of Japanese culture and also the journal that I mentioned before in our group chat, WhatsApp group chat. Thank you, everyone. And good night or good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Bye bye.